They say blood is thicker than water. But I learned the hard way that money is thicker than both. My name is Robert Chen, and for 23 years, my son pretended I didn't exist. 23 years of silence. No birthday calls. No Christmas cards. Not even a text message when his grandmother, my mother, died. And then, 6 months ago, everything changed. Not because he suddenly remembered he had a father. Not because he felt guilty or wanted to reconcile. No. He came back because Forbes published an article with my face on the cover and 9 zeros next to my name. This is the story of how I went from invisible to invaluable in my son's eyes. And what I did when he finally knocked on my door with that practiced smile and those empty words. But to understand why his return felt like a knife in my chest, you need to know how we got here. You need to know about the day he walked away and never looked back. It was June 2001. I remember the exact date because it was 2 days after my 42nd birthday. A birthday I spent alone in a one-bedroom apartment in Queens, eating leftover Chinese food and wondering where everything went wrong. My son, Marcus, was 19 then. Smart kid. Full scholarship to Columbia. Pre-med track. The kind of son any father would be proud of. And I was proud. God, I was so proud I could barely breathe sometimes when I looked at him. But Marcus didn't see it that way. See, his mother, my ex-wife, Catherine, she'd spent 19 years carefully constructing a narrative. In her story, I was the villain, the deadbeat, the man who chose failure over family. And by the time Marcus was old enough to question that story, he'd already made up his mind about who I was. The divorce happened when Marcus was 7. Catherine got full custody. My own fault, really. I was working 3 jobs back then, trying to keep us afloat after my small business went under. I missed court dates. Couldn't afford a decent lawyer. The judge took one look at my financial situation and my work schedule and decided Marcus was better off with his mother. Maybe he was right. I don't know anymore. Catherine remarried when Marcus was 9. A thoracic surgeon named David Whitmore. Big house in Westchester. Country club membership. Private schools. Everything I couldn't give my son. And slowly, gradually I became optional. At first, Marcus would still come for his weekend visits. We'd go to the park, get pizza, watch movies in my tiny apartment. He'd tell me about school, about his friends, about the baseball team he joined. Those weekends were the only thing keeping me alive. But as he got older, the visits became less frequent. He had soccer practice, study groups, birthday parties. Always something more important. And I understood. I really did. He was building a life. A good life. Better than anything I could offer. By the time he was 16, the visits stopped completely. I still paid child support, of course. Every month, like clockwork, even when it meant I couldn't make rent. Even when it meant eating ramen for weeks. Because that was my responsibility. He was my son. But the checks weren't enough. They were never enough. I tried calling. Left voicemails that went unreturned. Sent birthday cards that were never acknowledged. Showed up to his high school graduation only to watch from the parking lot because Catherine made it clear I wasn't welcome at the ceremony. I saw him walk across that stage through a chain-link fence, squinting in the June sun, and I cried like I hadn't cried since I was a child. Because I knew in that moment, I was losing him forever. The final break came that night in June 2001. I'd asked Marcus to have dinner with me before he left for college. Just one dinner. One last chance to connect before he started his new life. He agreed, reluctantly, and we met at a diner in Manhattan, halfway between my world and his. He was late. 40 minutes late. And when he finally showed up, he barely looked at me. We ordered. Made small talk. He told me about his classes, his roommate, his orientation schedule. All surface-level stuff. Nothing real. Nothing that mattered. And then I made a mistake. I asked him if he'd consider having regular calls once he started school. Maybe once a week, I suggested. Just to stay connected. The look he gave me, I'll never forget it. It wasn't anger. It wasn't even annoyance. It was pity. Like I was some stray dog begging for scraps. "Dad," he said, and even that word sounded wrong coming from his mouth, like he was forcing it out. "I think it's better if we just don't do this anymore." I felt my stomach drop. Don't do what? This. The pretending. The forced relationship. He pushed his half-eaten burger away. "You were never really there when I was growing up. David was. He's the one who taught me to drive, helped me with college applications, came to my games. He's been more of a father to me than you ever were." Every word was a bullet. "Marcus, I tried." "You tried?" His voice rose slightly, and a couple at the next table glanced over. "You tried?" "Trying means showing up, Dad. Trying means being present. You can't just throw money at a problem and call it parenting." "The money was all I had to give," I said quietly. "I was working every hour I could to make sure you had what you needed." "What I needed was a father." He stood up abruptly, chair scraping against the linoleum floor. "But you know what? I don't even need that anymore. I have a real family now. A family that actually wants me. That actually shows up." He pulled out his wallet, dropped a 20 on the table. "Don't call me anymore. Don't send cards. Don't show up at my dorm. I'm done pretending you're part of my life. I'm done feeling guilty for not wanting a relationship with someone who was barely there in the first place." And then he walked out. I sat there for maybe 30 minutes, staring at that $20 bill, unable to move. Unable to process what had just happened. Other diners came and went. The waitress refilled my coffee twice. Eventually, I paid the bill and drove back to Queens in a fog. That was the last time I saw my son for 23 years. People always ask what drives success. What makes someone obsessed enough to work 18-hour days, to sacrifice everything, to build an empire from nothing? For some people, it's ambition. For others, it's greed. For me, it was emptiness. After Marcus walked away, I had nothing left to lose. No family waiting at home. No relationships to maintain. No obligations beyond survival. And in that void, something crystallized. If I couldn't be the father Marcus wanted, maybe I could at least prove I wasn't the failure Catherine convinced him I was. I was 42 years old, working as a mid-level IT consultant for a pharmaceutical company. Decent job. Decent salary. Nothing special. But I'd always been good with systems. Seeing patterns, finding inefficiencies, building better solutions. So I started small. I took every freelance project I could find. Built websites for local businesses. Developed custom databases for small companies. Saved every penny. Slept 4 hours a night and worked through the weekends. Within 2 years, I'd saved enough to quit my job and start my own consulting firm. Just me, a laptop, and a tiny office in a shared workspace in Brooklyn. It nearly killed me. That first year, I came within days of bankruptcy 3 times. Lived on coffee and stress. Lost 20 pounds. Developed an ulcer. But I landed a few big contracts. Word spread. Companies started calling me instead of me chasing them. And slowly, painfully slowly, the business grew. By 2005, I had 5 employees. By 2008, 20. We specialized in supply chain optimization software, helping mid-size companies streamline their logistics. Not sexy, not glamorous, but profitable. The financial crisis should have destroyed us. Instead, it became our launching pad. When companies were bleeding money, Desperate to cut costs and survive, they came to us. Our software could identify inefficiencies that were costing them millions. We could show ROI within months. We became essential. I hired aggressively during the recession. Brilliant people who'd been laid off from bigger firms. Developers, engineers, analysts who were overqualified and underemployed. I paid them well and gave them equity. Built a culture of intensity and excellence. By 2012, we had Fortune 500 clients. By 2015, we were processing billions of dollars in logistics data annually. By 2018, Amazon came knocking with an acquisition offer. I turned them down. We went public instead. The IPO happened in October 2020, right as the pandemic was accelerating e-commerce and supply chain chaos. Our stock price tripled in the first year. Companies were desperate for the solutions we provided. We expanded into AI-driven predictive logistics, automated warehouse management, last-mile delivery optimization. By 2023, my company, LogiStream, was valued at $14 billion. And me? According to Forbes, my net worth was somewhere around $3.2 billion. I'd succeeded beyond my wildest dreams. Built something remarkable. Changed an entire industry. Employed thousands of people. But every single day, I woke up in my penthouse apartment overlooking Central Park, and the first thought in my head was always the same. I wonder what Marcus is doing. I wonder if he knows. I wonder if he cares. I'd hired private investigators over the years. I know how that sounds. Creepy, obsessive, pathetic. But I needed to know he was okay. That he was happy. That he'd built a good life even without me in it. The reports came back regularly. Marcus had graduated from Columbia. Went to medical school at Penn, became a dermatologist. Married a woman named Jennifer, also a doctor. Had 2 kids, my grandchildren, though they'd never know it. Lived in a nice house in suburban New Jersey. Solid career. Comfortable life. David Whitmore, his stepfather, had paid for medical school. Helped him start his practice. Was apparently Grandpa Dave to my grandchildren. I was nowhere in the picture. Erased completely. And I told myself I was fine with that. Told myself that knowing he was happy was enough. That I didn't need recognition or reconciliation. That I'd made peace with being a ghost in my son's life. I was lying to myself, of course. Because every achievement felt hollow. Every milestone meaningless. What's the point of building an empire if there's no one you truly care about to share it with? I dated occasionally. Had a few relationships that went nowhere. Most women in my circle were either intimidated by my wealth or only interested in it. The few genuine connections I made fell apart because I was emotionally unavailable. How could I let someone in when the most important relationship of my life was an open wound that never healed? So I threw myself deeper into work. Launched new initiatives. Expanded into international markets. Made more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes, and tried not to think about the son who'd erased me from his life. Then came the Forbes article. It published on a Tuesday in March 2024. The Logistics King. How Robert Chen built a supply chain empire and changed e-commerce forever. My PR team had been pushing for it. Good for the company, they said. Humanizes the brand. Shows the founder's journey. I'd resisted for months but eventually gave in. The article was comprehensive. Detailed my early failures. The divorce. The years of struggle. My obsessive work ethic. The company's meteoric rise. They even included my philosophy on business. Find the inefficiency everyone else accepts and eliminate it. Simple idea. Hard execution. What they didn't include, because I never told them, was the real reason behind my drive. The sun-shaped hole in my life that I'd tried to fill with success. The article went viral in business circles. LinkedIn exploded. I did a few podcast interviews. Got invited to speak at conferences. The usual CEO stuff. I barely noticed. It was just noise. What I didn't realize was that the article had reached Marcus. 3 weeks after publication, my assistant buzzed me during a board meeting. "I'm sorry to interrupt, Mr. Chen, but there's a Marcus Chen here to see you. He says he's your son. He doesn't have an appointment, but—" I stood up so fast my chair rolled backward and hit the wall. "Tell him I'll be right there." The board members exchanged confused glances. I didn't care. I mumbled something about a family emergency and walked out. My hands were shaking as I rode the elevator down to the lobby. 23 years. 23 years of silence. And now he was here. In my building. Wanting to see me. Maybe he'd read the article and realized he'd been wrong about me. Maybe he wanted to reconnect. To apologize. To build something real after all these years. Maybe. I saw him through the glass doors before I entered the lobby. He was 42 now, the same age I'd been when he walked away. Distinguished. Gray touching his temples. Expensive suit. Confident posture. The kind of man who belonged in places like this. He looked so much like my father it hurt. I pushed through the doors, and he turned. Our eyes met for the first time in over 2 decades. "Marcus," I said. My voice cracked slightly. He smiled. Warm. Practiced. The smile of someone about to ask for something. "Hi, Dad. It's been a while." We went to my office. Top floor. Corner suite. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan. The kind of office that screams success. I offered him coffee, water, anything. He declined. We sat across from each other in the seating area. 2 leather chairs separated by a glass coffee table that probably cost more than his first car. For a moment, neither of us spoke. I studied his face, searching for the 19-year-old boy who'd walked away from that diner. He was still there, somewhere beneath the years and the confidence and the careful grooming. "You look good," I finally said. "Successful. Happy. Thank you. You too." He gestured at the office. "This is impressive. Really impressive. I had no idea you'd built something like this." There it was. The opening. The acknowledgement of what I'd achieved. "It took time," I said carefully. "A lot of years. A lot of work. I read the Forbes article. The whole thing. Your story is remarkable, Dad. Truly. Going from where you were to this." He shook his head in apparent admiration. "Most people would have given up. But you didn't." Each word of praise felt like poison, because I could hear what was underneath it. The surprise. The unspoken assumption that he hadn't expected me to amount to anything. "Why are you here, Marcus?" He blinked, as if the question caught him off guard. I wanted to see you. To reconnect. It's been too long. 23 years. Yes, 23 years. And He looked down at his hands. "I've been thinking a lot lately about family. About legacy. About the mistakes we make when we're young." "Mistakes," I repeated. I was angry back then. Hurt. I blamed you for things that maybe weren't entirely your fault. Mom had her perspective, and I adopted it without really questioning it. That wasn't fair to you. It was a good speech. Probably rehearsed. Maybe even partially genuine. "So this is an apology?" I asked. "It's a starting point," he said. "I'm not going to pretend I can undo 23 years in one conversation. But I'd like to try. To build something. Get to know each other as adults." "Why now?" He hesitated. Just for a second. But I saw it. Because life is short. Because I have kids now, your grandchildren, and I want them to know their grandfather. Because it's the right thing to do. All reasonable answers. All plausible. All probably bullshit. You have 2 kids, I said. Benjamin is 11. Sophia is 8. Benjamin plays soccer and wants to be a veterinarian. Sophia is obsessed with Hamilton and marine biology. Jennifer, your wife, specializes in pediatric dermatology. You own a practice in Montclair. Your stepfather helped you buy it. His face went pale. How do you know all that? Because you're my son. Because I never stopped caring, even after you told me not to. I've kept track of your life from a distance because it was the only connection I had left. He looked uncomfortable now. Good. I don't know if that's comforting or disturbing. Both, probably. I leaned back in my chair. Let me ask you something, Marcus. If that Forbes article had never been published, would you be here right now? Dad, would you? If I was still that IT consultant you dismissed all those years ago, would you have shown up at my office wanting to reconnect? Silence. Be honest with me, I said quietly. That's all I'm asking. Just be honest. He took a breath. Looked away. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter, less confident. The article made me realize I'd misjudged things. Misjudged you. It made me want to reach out. Because I'm successful now. Because I finally understood the full story. His voice rose defensively. The article talked about your struggles after the divorce. How you were working multiple jobs, barely surviving. How you built this company from nothing while dealing with. I didn't know any of that, Dad. Mom never told me. She just said you chose work over family. And you never thought to ask my side? He flinched. You're right, he said after a moment. I didn't. I was a kid, and then I was an angry teenager, and then I was an adult who'd already made up his mind. That was wrong. I'm acknowledging that. I'm trying to fix it. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe him so badly. Because sitting across from my son after 23 years, hearing him say he was wrong, hearing him say he wanted to try, it was everything I dreamed about during those lonely years of building my empire. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being played. Tell me about your practice, I said, changing the subject. He relaxed slightly, clearly grateful for easier territory. It's going well. Busy. We have 3 locations now, 7 other doctors on staff. It's been challenging keeping up with overhead costs. Rent in North Jersey is brutal, but we're managing. Challenging how? Just the usual stuff. Equipment costs. Insurance. Staff salaries. Nothing we can't handle. There it was. The subtle mention of financial pressure. And David? Your stepfather? Is he still helping out? Marcus shifted in his seat. David's been great. He's helped a lot over the years. But he's getting older, thinking about retirement. He's been pulling back from some of his financial commitments. Translation. The money was drying up. We talked for another hour. He showed me pictures of his kids on his phone. Told me stories about their school activities, their personalities, their dreams. I devoured every detail like a man dying of thirst. He invited me to dinner that weekend, to meet Jennifer and the kids, to start building a relationship. I said yes, because I'm a fool. Because 23 years of absence doesn't kill hope, it just makes it desperate and pathetic and willing to believe anything. The dinner was at their house in Montclair, a beautiful colonial in a neighborhood of tall trees and well-maintained lawns. The kind of place I dreamed of providing for Marcus when he was young. Jennifer met me at the door. Polite, warm, clearly briefed on the situation. It's wonderful to finally meet you, Mr. Chen. Marcus has told me so much about you. Lies, but nice lies. The kids were shy at first. Benjamin, the 11-year-old, shook my hand formally. Sophia hid behind her mother's leg. But kids are adaptable, and by the time we sat down for dinner, they were asking questions. "Are you really a billionaire?" Benjamin asked, earning an immediate "Benjamin" from his mother. I laughed. "I have a successful company. I've been very fortunate." "Did you always want to be rich?" Sophia asked. "No," I said honestly. "I just wanted to solve problems." The success came later. Over pot roast and mashed potatoes, Jennifer apologized for the simple meal. I told her it was perfect. I learned about their lives. Benjamin's soccer team was going to regionals. Sophia was learning piano. They went to a private school that cost $40,000 a year per kid. They vacationed in the Hamptons every summer. They were good kids. Bright. Well-raised. And they looked at Marcus with obvious love and admiration. It hurt more than I expected, watching my son be the father I never got to be. After dinner, the kids showed me their rooms. Sophia's was covered in posters of ocean creatures. Benjamin had a shelf full of soccer trophies. I complimented everything, asked questions, tried to be the grandfather they'd never had. When they went to bed, Marcus opened a bottle of wine. Expensive, I noticed, and we sat in his home office. "They're wonderful kids," I said. "You and Jennifer are doing an amazing job." "Thank you. They're everything to me." He paused. "I want them to have a relationship with you, Dad. I want them to know their grandfather. If you're open to that." "Of course I am." We talked more. He asked about my business, my daily routine, my plans for the future. I asked about his practice, his patience, his goals. And then, around 10 o'clock, after the wine had lowered some guards, he finally showed his cards. "I need to be honest with you about something," he said. "Here we go. The practice is struggling. Not failing, but it's tight. We overextended when we opened the third location. The equipment loans are substantial. We're managing, but there's not much cushion." And with David pulling back his support, he trailed off. I said nothing, just waited. "I'm not asking for a handout," he said quickly. "I would never do that. But I was thinking, maybe there's a way we could work together. A business opportunity. You have resources, connections, expertise in building companies. I have a growing medical practice in a lucrative field. There could be synergy there." "Synergy," I repeated. "An investment opportunity," he clarified. "With proper terms, equity, a real partnership. I've drawn up some projections." He actually pulled out a folder. Had it ready. Projections. Business plans. Numbers highlighting the growth potential of his dermatology practice. I leafed through it slowly. It was professional. Well-researched. Showed how an infusion of $2 million could expand the practice significantly, with projected returns of 15% annually. A decent investment, objectively. Not great, but decent. But that's not what this was about. "How long did it take you to put this together?" I asked quietly. "What?" "This proposal. How long?" He hesitated. "A couple weeks." "Why?" "So you contacted me 3 weeks ago, immediately after the Forbes article. And in that time, you've prepared a full investment proposal, invited me to meet your family, and positioned this whole reunion as a business opportunity." "It's not like that." "What's it like then?" His face flushed. "I told you, I wanted to reconnect. The business stuff is separate. I thought since we were building a relationship anyway, it made sense to explore. Explore how you could monetize it." "That's not fair." I closed the folder and set it on his desk. "Let me tell you what's not fair, Marcus. What's not fair is spending 23 years in complete silence. What's not fair is telling your father you're done with him, that he's not worth your time, that he should stop trying to be part of your life. What's not fair is erasing someone completely and then showing up the moment they become valuable. I admitted I was wrong. You admitted you misjudged my success. That's different from admitting you were wrong about me as a person. He stood up, agitated. What do you want from me? I'm here, aren't I? I'm trying. I brought you into my home, introduced you to my kids, opened up about my life. I'm giving you what you wanted, a relationship. No, I said, standing as well. You're giving me access. That's not the same thing. We stared at each other. The resemblance between us felt like mockery in that moment. I'm going to go, I said finally. Thank you for dinner. Thank you for letting me meet Benjamin and Sophia. They're wonderful. Dad, wait. I'll be in touch, I said. I need some time to think. I left before he could respond. I didn't contact Marcus for 3 weeks after that dinner. He called me 5 times. Left voicemails that progressed from apologetic to frustrated to worried. Sent texts asking if he'd offended me, if we could talk, if I was upset about the investment proposal. I didn't respond. Instead, I had my head of HR create a fake job posting. Director of Operations for our East Coast distribution network. 6-figure salary. Good benefits. Room for advancement. We posted it on all the major job sites. Then I had my private investigator, the same one who'd been tracking Marcus's life, anonymously send the posting to Jennifer's email with a note. Thought your husband might be interested. Growing company, stable industry, great opportunity. I watched through my networks as Marcus applied. His resume came through the normal channels. Good credentials. Solid experience running a business, even if it wasn't logistics. He made it through the first round of screening. Then I had my HR director call him personally. Mr. Chen? This is Carol from LogiStream. We're very impressed with your resume. We'd like to invite you for a first-round interview. I should mention, this position reports directly to our founder and CEO, Robert Chen. I understand you share a last name, any relation? There was a pause on the line. Then, he's my father, actually. But I haven't spoken to him in many years. I applied for the position on its own merits. Of course. Well, we'll be in touch about scheduling. Thank you for your interest. She called me immediately after. He lied. Said he hasn't spoken to you in years. Interesting. Marcus never mentioned applying to my company. Never called to explain. Never acknowledged it at all. A week later, I had Carol call him again. Mr. Chen, we'd like to move forward with your application. But I need to clarify something. You indicated on your resume that you have extensive experience in business operations and strategic growth. Can you elaborate on your specific experience with supply chain logistics? Another pause. I'm a quick learner. My experience running a multi-location medical practice involves similar operational challenges. Inventory management, staff coordination, location optimization. The skills are transferable. I see. And your interest in LogiStream specifically, is that related to your father's position with the company? No. I researched the company independently. I think it's doing innovative work. More lies. Carol scheduled him for an in-person interview. He confirmed. Never reached out to me. I didn't let him come in. I had Carol call the day before and cancel, citing internal restructuring. But I learned everything I needed to know. My son was willing to lie about our relationship to get a job at my company. Was prepared to pretend we were estranged to avoid appearing like he was trading on my success. Was ready to show up at my office for a job interview without giving me any warning or explanation. He wanted access to my resources. Not a relationship. Not reconciliation. Just access. I finally called him on a Tuesday afternoon, 6 weeks after that dinner at his house. Dad, He sounded relieved. I've been trying to reach you. I know. I've been busy. Is everything okay? I was worried I'd offended you somehow. Can you come to my office tomorrow? Late afternoon. Say 5 o'clock. Of course. Absolutely. I'll be there. He showed up early. Carol brought him to my office, and he entered with that same practiced smile, but I could see the nervousness underneath. Thanks for seeing me, he said. I wasn't sure if you were upset about the investment proposal. I didn't mean to pressure you. I just thought. I know about the job application. He froze. Logie Stream, Director of Operations. You applied 4 weeks ago. His face went through several expressions. Confusion, realization, panic. I didn't realize that was your company. The posting didn't. Don't. I held up a hand. Don't lie. Not anymore. You knew exactly what company you were applying to. You told our HR director you hadn't spoken to me in years to avoid looking like you were trading on our relationship. He sat down heavily. How did you know? Because I planted the job posting. I wanted to see what you'd do. You? What? I needed to know if this reconciliation was real or if it was just about accessing my resources. So I created a test. And you failed, Marcus. Spectacularly. He looked genuinely shocked. Maybe even hurt. That's manipulative. Is it? More manipulative than reconnecting with your estranged father specifically because he became a billionaire? More manipulative than preparing an investment pitch before your first dinner with your grandchildren. I was desperate. The words burst out of him. Okay. I was desperate. The practice is underwater. We're 3 months from bankruptcy. The equipment loans, the lease obligations, the payroll, it's crushing us. David cut me off because I made some bad investments. We're about to lose everything, Dad. Our house is mortgaged to the limit. We've burned through our savings. I didn't know what else to do. There it was. The truth. Raw and ugly and desperate. So you thought, my father is rich now. Maybe I can use that. No. I mean, yes, I thought about it, but it wasn't just that. Reading that article, learning about what you went through, what you built, it made me realize I'd been unfair to you. I wanted to reconnect. And yes, I also hoped maybe you could help with the practice. Is that so terrible? Is it wrong to want both? It's not wrong to want help, I said. It's wrong to be dishonest about why you're seeking a relationship. I wasn't dishonest. You were exclusively dishonest. Every single thing you've done since showing up at my office has been calculated. The warm greeting, the family dinner, the investment pitch, the job application. All of it designed to access my money while maintaining plausible deniability about your real motivations. He didn't argue, just sat there, looking defeated. Do you even want a relationship with me? I asked. Or is that just a means to an end? I don't know. His voice was barely above a whisper. I don't know, Dad. I'm so underwater right now, so stressed about losing everything, I can't think straight. Maybe it started as pure opportunism. Maybe it's evolved into something more. I honestly don't know anymore. At least that felt true. You have 2 kids and a wife depending on you, I said. A practice you've built. A life that's about to collapse. I understand that pressure. I understand desperation. Hope flickered in his eyes. But I also spent 23 years being told I wasn't worth your time. 23 years of silence. Of being erased. Of watching from a distance as you built a life with someone else as your father figure. You don't get to weaponize my wealth to save yourself now. So you're not going to help me. It wasn't a question. I didn't say that. He looked up, confused. I pulled out a folder from my desk drawer. This is a comprehensive financial analysis of your practice. Cash flow, debts, assets, projections. I had my team put it together. His face went red. You've been investigating me? Same way I've been tracking your life for 23 years. You're my son. I need to know what's happening with you, even if you don't want me to. He took the folder, leafing through it with shaking hands. Your practice is in worse shape than you told me, I said. You're not 3 months from bankruptcy. You're 3 weeks. Maybe less. He closed his eyes. But it's also salvageable. With the right financial restructuring, operational changes, and capital infusion, you could stabilize within 6 months and be profitable within 2 years. It would require about $3 million, not 2, and significant changes to how you run the business. You'd do that? His voice cracked. After everything I've done? After lying to you? No. His face fell. I won't give you the money, but I will loan it to you. Market rate interest. 5-year term. With conditions. What conditions? First, you bring in one of my operational consultants to restructure your practice. You implement every change they recommend. No arguments, no pushback. You prove you're serious about fixing your business, not just throwing money at problems. Second, you stop lying. To me, to yourself, about what this relationship is. If you want my help because I'm rich and you're desperate, own that. Don't dress it up as reconciliation. Third, I want a real relationship with my grandchildren. Not performances. Not dinners where everyone's on their best behavior. Real access. Regular visits. I want to be their grandfather, not their mother's ATM machine who happens to be related to them. He nodded slowly. Okay, I can do that. I'm not finished. Fourth condition, you go to therapy. Real therapy to deal with whatever anger and resentment you still have about the divorce, about your childhood, about me. Because until you process that, we'll never have an honest relationship. And I'll pay for it. That's not part of the loan. That's just me being your father. He was crying now, silent tears running down his face. And fifth, this is the hard one, Marcus. You have to accept that I might never forgive you for those 23 years. I'll help you because you're my son and because those kids don't deserve to suffer for your mistakes. But I can't promise you will ever have the relationship you want. The relationship I wanted back in 2001 when you walked out of that diner. That window might be closed forever. I understand, he whispered. Do you? Because I need you to really understand. I'm not doing this to buy your love or earn your respect. I'm doing this because it's the right thing to do. Because I'm your father, even if you spent 2 decades pretending I wasn't. But don't mistake my help for forgiveness. Don't mistake financial support for emotional reconciliation. He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. What if I want to try anyway? To build something real? Then you'll have to earn it. The same way I earned every dollar in my company. Through time, consistency, honesty, and showing up even when it's hard. I can do that. We'll see. I slid a contract across the desk. This is the loan agreement. Read it carefully. Have a lawyer review it if you want. If you agree to the terms, sign it. If not, walk away and figure out your financial situation on your own. No hard feelings either way. He picked up the contract with shaking hands. Read through it slowly. It was generous by any standard. Low interest rate, favorable terms, built-in flexibility if revenues dipped during restructuring. But it was still a loan, not a gift. He would owe me. He would have to pay me back. There would be accountability. Can I ask you something? He said, not looking up from the pages. Go ahead. Why are you doing this? Really? I thought about that for a long moment. Because I spent your entire childhood working multiple jobs to pay child support. Because I showed up to your high school graduation even though I wasn't welcome. Because I never stopped being your father, even when you stopped being my son. And because those kids upstairs in Montclair deserve stability and security, and it's not their fault their father made mistakes. I paused. But also, because I need to know if there's anything real underneath all the bullshit. If my son is capable of change, of honesty, of actually putting in the work to repair what he broke. And the only way to know that is to give you the chance. He signed the contract. The restructuring was brutal. My consultant, a woman named Patricia who'd saved a dozen failing businesses, tore through Marcus's practice like a hurricane. She fired underperforming staff, renegotiated every contract, closed the third location that was bleeding money, implemented new scheduling software, new inventory management, new patient acquisition strategies. Marcus called me every week, frustrated, exhausted, sometimes angry about the changes. I listened, didn't intervene, told him this was part of the deal. Patricia wants to cut our hours on Fridays, he complained during one call. But that's when we have the most appointment requests. And what did your data show when she analyzed it? Silence. She's right, isn't she? Friday appointments have the highest no-show rate and the lowest average revenue. Yes. Then trust the process. He did, grudgingly. And slowly, month by month, the practice stabilized. Debts were refinanced. Cash flow improved. Patients who'd been waiting months for appointments suddenly had availability. Staff morale increased as the constant crisis atmosphere lifted. Meanwhile, I started seeing Benjamin and Sophia every other weekend. The first few visits were awkward. They were polite, curious about my penthouse and my life, but cautious. I was a stranger who happened to be related to them, so I didn't try to force it. I asked about their interests and actually listened. Took Benjamin to a professional soccer game and learned the names of his favorite players. Took Sophia to the aquarium and watched her face light up when she got to touch a stingray. I didn't buy their love with expensive gifts. I bought their time with attention. By the third month, Sophia was calling me Grandpa Robert without prompting. Benjamin was texting me soccer updates and memes. They were just kids being kids, and I was just a grandfather being present. It was healing something in me I didn't realize was still broken. Marcus, to his credit, followed through on therapy. His therapist was someone I'd vetted carefully, experienced with family estrangement, trauma, complicated parent-child relationships. Marcus went every week, and while he never shared the details of his sessions, I could see changes. He stopped making excuses, stopped deflecting. When we had difficult conversations, he'd catch himself in old patterns and correct them. About 4 months in, we had dinner, just the two of us, at a quiet restaurant in Manhattan. "I need to tell you something," he said after we'd ordered. I waited. My therapist asked me to do an exercise, to write down every memory I have of you from childhood, everything good and bad, and then to research what was actually happening in your life at those times. He pulled out a folded piece of paper from his jacket pocket. "I remembered you missing my 8th birthday party. I was so angry at you. Mom kept saying you didn't care enough to show up. I built this whole narrative around it, that you chose work over me, that I wasn't important to you." He unfolded the paper. But I looked up the date. March 15th, 1990. You weren't at my party because you were in the hospital. You'd collapsed at one of your jobs from exhaustion and dehydration. You'd been working 70-hour weeks to make child support payments and keep a roof over your head. You were literally working yourself to death trying to provide for me. His voice cracked. And Mom never told me. She just let me think you didn't care. And I believed it. I believed it for 30 years. I didn't know what to say. There were dozens of moments like that, he continued. Times I thought you weren't there, but you were, just invisible, working in the background, sacrificing everything, and I never saw it, never even looked. Your mother did what she thought was right, I said carefully. She was protecting you from— No. He shook his head. She was poisoning me against you. There's a difference. And I let her do it because it was easier to have a villain than to grapple with a complicated situation where everyone was hurting and doing their best. He looked directly at me. I'm not asking you to forget the last 23 years. I know I destroyed something that can't be fully repaired, but I need you to know that I finally understand what you sacrificed, what you gave up, how hard you tried. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I couldn't see it until now. It was the first apology that felt completely real. Thank you, I said quietly. That means more than you know. We ate in silence for a while. Comfortable silence. For the first time ever. The practice is going to be profitable this quarter, he said eventually. Patricia's projections were conservative. We're actually ahead of schedule. That's good. You've done the work. I'm going to start paying back the loan early. I know the terms give me more time, but I want to. Marcus, the loan repayment isn't what matters to me. He looked up. What matters is whether you're building something sustainable, something real, for yourself, for your family. The money will come back to me eventually. I'm not worried about that. What are you worried about? That you'll slip back into old patterns once the crisis is over. That this honesty, this effort, is temporary. That we're just in a grace period before you decide you don't need me again. He set down his fork. What would convince you that this is real? Time, I said. Consistency. Showing up even when there's no financial incentive to do so. That's what builds trust. Then I'll show up, he said. However long it takes. A year and a half after Marcus first walked back into my life, I made a decision. The practice was thriving. Marcus had paid back nearly 40% of the loan ahead of schedule. He was seeing his therapist regularly. He called me every week, even when there was nothing urgent to discuss. He invited me to family dinners, school events, soccer games. He was present, consistent, trying. The kids adored me. I was fully integrated into their lives now, picking them up from school sometimes, helping with homework, attending Sophia's piano recitals and Benjamin's matches. I'd become what I'd always wanted to be, their grandfather. And slowly, painfully, tentatively, Marcus and I were building something that resembled a father-son relationship. It wasn't perfect. We had setbacks. Moments when old patterns surfaced and we had to navigate them carefully. Times when I wondered if I was being manipulated again, if this was all an elaborate long game. Times when Marcus still struggled with resentment and guilt. But it was real. Messy and complicated and real. Then, in December 2025, David Whitmore, Marcus's stepfather, had a massive heart attack. He survived, but the prognosis wasn't good. Significant heart damage. Limited mobility going forward. He'd need full-time care. Marcus was devastated. Whatever complicated feelings he had about his childhood, David had been a consistent presence in his life. A good man who'd stepped up when I couldn't. I went to the hospital. Not to see David, we'd never met, and it didn't feel right to intrude, but to support Marcus. He was sitting in the waiting room, head in his hands, when I arrived. How is he? I asked. Stable. But he's going to need long-term care. Probably a facility eventually. It's going to be expensive, and his insurance only covers so much. I sat down next to him. I'm going to help, Marcus said. However I can. He was there for me when— He stopped, realizing what he was about to say. When I wasn't, I finished for him. I didn't mean— It's okay. It's true. He was your father in all the ways that mattered. I understand that. Marcus looked at me with wet eyes. Does it bother you? That I love him? That he was more of a dad to me than you were? It was the most honest question he'd ever asked me. Yes, I said. It bothers me every single day. It's a wound that never fully heals. But it also doesn't change the reality. He earned that role. He was there. He gets to be loved for it. I'm sorry. Don't be. He gave you something I couldn't. I'm grateful for that, even if it hurts. We sat in silence. I want to help with his care, I said finally. What? David. I want to help cover his medical expenses. Whatever isn't covered by insurance. Marcus stared at me. Why would you do that? Because he took care of my son when I couldn't. Because he stepped into a void I left and did a better job than I would have. Because without him, you might not have become the man you are. Flawed as our relationship has been, you're still a good father, a good husband, a good doctor. He helped build that. Dad, you don't have to. I know I don't have to. I want to. Let me do this. Not for you. For him. He deserves it. Marcus broke down then. Full, heaving sobs. 23 years of complications and guilt and pain pouring out in that sterile waiting room. I held my son while he cried, and for the first time since that diner in 2001, it felt like we were finally being honest with each other. David Whitmore died 6 months later, in June 2026. His heart just gave out one night in his sleep. Peaceful, his wife said. No suffering. The funeral was packed. Marcus delivered the eulogy, and I sat in the back, watching my son grieve the man who'd been more of a father to him than I ever was. It hurt. God, it hurt. But I stayed. Paid my respects. Hugged Marcus when he needed it. Didn't make it about me. Because that's what fathers do. They show up. Even when it's hard. Even when it hurts. After the funeral, after the reception, after everyone had left, Marcus and I sat on his back porch with whiskey and silence. Thank you for being here, he said eventually. Where else would I be? I don't know. But a year ago, maybe you wouldn't have come. Maybe you would have thought it was inappropriate, or too painful, or that you didn't belong. A year ago, you would have been right. He smiled sadly. We've come a long way. Some ways. Not all the way. Will we ever get all the way? I thought about that. About the 23 years we'd lost. About the relationship we'd never have. The one where I'd been there for his childhood, his teenage years, his young adulthood. Where I'd been the one teaching him to drive and helping with college applications and walking him down the aisle at his wedding. That relationship was gone. Dead as surely as David Whitmore was. But there was something else in its place. Something fragile and new. Something we were building together in the wreckage of what could have been. I don't know, I said honestly. But I'm willing to keep trying if you are. I am. We sat in silence, watching the sun set over suburban New Jersey. I paid off the loan, Marcus said suddenly. Last week. Transferred the final payment. I know. My accountant told me. So we're square. Financially, at least. We're square. Does that change anything? What do you mean? Between us. Does it change how you see me, now that I don't owe you anything? I considered the question carefully. No, I said. Because you still owe me 23 years. And I owe you a childhood with a present father. Those debts can never be fully repaid. So we might as well stop keeping score and just try to build something going forward. He nodded slowly. I can live with that. Good. We finished our whiskey. Benjamin came outside, still in his funeral clothes. Dad? Grandpa Robert? Mom says dinner's ready if you're hungry. I looked at Marcus. He looked at me. We're coming, we said together. And we went inside to have dinner with our family. It's been 3 years now since Marcus first walked back into my life. We talk every week. I see the kids every other weekend without fail. We have family dinners once a month. We've even taken a few trips together. Disney World last year, which was chaotic and exhausting and wonderful. Marcus finished therapy but still checks in with his therapist quarterly. The practice is thriving. He's hired 2 more doctors and opened a 4th location, this time with sustainable financing and proper planning. He's a better man than he was 3 years ago. And maybe I'm a better father than I was 23 years ago. But we both carry scars. Sometimes Marcus still slips into old patterns, asking for business advice in ways that feel transactional rather than relational. Sometimes I still wonder if I'm being used, if this is all an elaborate performance. Sometimes Benjamin asks me about the years I wasn't around, and I have to figure out how to explain adult failures to a child's mind. Sometimes Sophia says something that sounds exactly like what Marcus used to say as a kid, and I'm overwhelmed by everything I missed. But we're here. We're present. We're trying. And maybe that's all reconciliation ever is. Not erasing the past or pretending the damage didn't happen, but choosing to show up anyway. To build something new in the ruins. To accept that some wounds never fully heal, but that doesn't mean you stop trying to move forward. Last month, Marcus called me with news. Jennifer is pregnant. An unexpected surprise at their age, but a welcome one. We'd like to name him after you if it's a boy, Marcus said. Robert Chen Jr. I was quiet for a long moment. That means a lot, I finally said. But I have a different suggestion. What's that? Name him David, after the man who was there when I couldn't be. He deserves that honor. There was a long pause. Are you sure? I'm sure. David raised you when I couldn't. This is one way to honor that, to acknowledge that fathers come in many forms, and he was one of the good ones. Marcus's voice was thick when he responded. Thank you, Dad. Thank you. You're welcome, son. And I meant it. Both words. The gratitude and the relationship. Because that's what I've learned in these 3 years. You can't change the past. You can't undo betrayals or erase years of absence. You can't manufacture love or force forgiveness. But you can show up. Day after day, week after week, year after year. You can be honest about the pain and the complications. You can do the work of rebuilding trust brick by careful brick. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes, that's enough. Is my relationship with Marcus what it could have been if I'd been present from the start? No. Will I ever fully trust that his love isn't conditional on my wealth? Probably not. Will he ever fully forgive me for the ways I failed him as a child? I doubt it. But we have something real now. Complicated and imperfect and painfully earned. And that's more than I had 3 years ago when he walked into my office with that practiced smile and that hidden agenda. Money made him notice me. Desperation made him reach out. But time and honesty and showing up, that's what made us family again. Not the family we could have been, but the family we are. And maybe that's the real lesson here. Life doesn't give you the reconciliation you wanted. It gives you the reconciliation you're willing to work for. My son ignored me for 23 years until I became a billionaire. Then he came back. But money didn't save our relationship. Work did. Honesty did. Forgiveness, complicated, partial, imperfect forgiveness, did. And 3 years later, we're still here. Still trying. Still showing up. That's not the ending I wanted when this started. But it's the ending we earned. And for now, that's enough.